to start somewhere. It has to start sometime. What better place than here? What better time than now? Lights out! Who in the radio? Turn that shit up! Lights out! Who in the radio?
Hello, folks. We're back again. Scott Beebe, Dave Myers, allegedly.
Yeah, of course, allegedly. We were gonna have Svetlana come on, like I said last episode, but no, she's
She bitched out.
yeah, basically. So, and actually, you know, we may experiment with this sometime during this show. We wanted it to be a call-in show at some point, but you see, with that whole, you know, deciding whether to have a daily meal or have a six-pack, we can't pay the phone bill, so we're gonna have to see where that goes. But
Call-ins later on, but today we're supposed to have a guest stop in. His name's Alex Gus. He's just a good friend of mine who has a lot of opinions on the topic that we're going to be discussing today, which is Muslims.
Yes. Yeah, vote Trump!
Yeah, or not. Muslims, something that I never heard talked about really up in, I don't know, what did you say, 9/11?
Yeah, it really came to the forefront at, when the whole bombing of buildings in New York happened, and also the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. And actually, see, the thing is that my degree being in philosophy and theology, even though I'm not a religious person, I actually do have an extensive understanding about Islam. So this should be quite interesting once we get our guest in.
And me, having graduated the 11th grade.
11th?
11th grade.
Oh!
I have some opinions, too. They're probably not as insightful as David and or Alex's will be. But I look at this from not a political standpoint or a religious standpoint, but more from a human nature standpoint. And that's one of the many things I'd like to get into on this topic, because there's a lot of finger pointing going on, unjustified finger pointing just for skin tones and or religious beliefs. And I don't necessarily think it's all justified.
Finger pointing, what do you mean exactly by that? You said by skin tone. I mean, obviously...
when we're talking about Muslims, when we're talking about the Syrian refugees is a good example.
Exactly. Didn't you hear what Mayor Peduto, is that his name, in Pittsburgh? Or our mayor has decided to make Pittsburgh a sanctuary city.
No.
Yes, I was reading about this in the Observer Reporter.
Don't get raped.
Yeah, well, look out for that. I was reading about this. This was maybe 1 or 2 months ago, but he decided that to go along with our brotherly lovers in Philly, as they're doing, we're going to be apparently inviting, I think, 1,000 Syrian refugees to the Pittsburgh area. And it was really weird because, see, when I read this article, he actually said that Syrians were a part of the building of Pittsburgh, which is really kind of silly. Apparently, there was maybe like one family that lived in the Hill District in like the 1850s, but but he said that that they were an integral part of building the city, which is obviously false, because there's a reason why our trademark food is pierogies and primantis and not
there's Polish Hill, not Syrian Hill.
Right, I've never seen a kebab hut somewhere on the side of the road in Pittsburgh.
Right.
So I don't know. We're gonna see how that goes. Apparently, there's some in Greensburg. They're inching themselves toward us. Luckily, we have a river, and they don't really have a lot of water out in Syria, I hear.
So like, are these people that are being displaced from the other countries that they've escaped to? Like, are we getting the ones fresh from Germany, or are we getting ones straight from the fucking belly of the beast?
The belly of the beast. These are the ones straight from Syria. They're the people who apparently, I guess, when we went to Iraq and armed the Iraqi army and a bunch of guys wearing black socks as their uniforms, dropped their weapons and ran, and well, now they're here.
Awesome.
That's yeah, exactly, awesome, great, so well, at least we'll be able to diversify our palate as far as culinary things go.
Do they have good food? I never had
No,
Syrian food.
Have you ever had a kebab before?
I guess. Isn't that just meat on a stick?
No,
I don't think anybody can claim
that's
to have invented meat on a stick.
I
I think that's just a thing we've done for a long time.
Well,
as humans.
that's actually a shish kebab. A kebab is those things. It's really it's the same thing as what do you call this? A gyro.
Oh, I love gyros.
I don't. I'm not.
Oh,
I don't like
will
cucumbers or
babies for a gyro. Kill babies and hang them up on a clothesline by their toes.
Right.
Allegedly.
So, yeah.
Gyros are good.
Well, apparently Scott likes gyros.
Scott loves gyros. Scott is in love with gyros. And actually, it's not even pronounced gyro. That's how we say it in Pittsburgh. But in Greek, they say gyro. It's a gyro. And I actually have a pet peeve with people who call it anything else because, yeah, we molested the pronunciation here in Pittsburgh, but we molest the pronunciation of everything here in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, well, pretty much. I mean, you heard. I had that difficulty. I had that the linguistics lesson from Scott regarding the pronunciation of Stillers.
Yeah,
Was that correct?
I could tell you've been practicing.
Yeah. And yeah. It actually, as he said, hero. That's what they call it in the Northeast. In Connecticut, they call it a hero. They spell it hero, but down here we call it a gyro when it's spelled with a G.
Oh, it's spelled with a G. It's spelled Gyro, but the pronunciation, if you were to spell it phonetically, would be Yeero.
Yeah, hero. So, yeah, again, nothing.
Anybody who calls them gyros is getting a bitch slap.
Oh. Is there are you having some repressed feelings? Is there a reason why you have such violent thoughts?
I have an ex whose parents used to call them gyros, and I explained what I just explained to you people about the correct pronunciation and what they call it here, even though that's not the correct pronunciation. But when in Rome,
do as the Romans.
Exactly. And they just would be like, you guys want to order some gyros? They're going to be delicious. They're gyros.
Just to pause that for a second, we need to...
fucking kill you.
Do in Rome as the Romans do. Any of you Syrians out there, you need to take heed to that message. But anyway,
So a kebab is a gyro.
A kebab is basically...
Without the tzatziki sauce.
It's pretty... Well, I don't know. What is tzatziki sauce?
That's the cucumber sauce.
Oh, no, it does include the cucumber sauce,
that's
yes.
the best part.
Basically, it's
like a mushroom covered in God's semen.
Pretty much, and the thing is, it's like, the difference... It's basically a cucumber burrito, but, see, the Arab person that made the said hero... they didn't have a table to roll it up on, so it's kind of like, it looks like a upside down fan type thing, or not fan, more like it's like a lampshade.
I got you. So it's like they made the bread into a bowl.
Yeah, it's like a bread bowl kind of thing.
Gotcha.
One of those kind of things you can take on the go. It's like what do they call those? Walking tacos. When you dump a bunch of you dump a can of
that's
Hormel.
called white trash food.
Yeah,
that's what that's called.
Yeah, you dump a can of Hormel chili into a bag of Doritos, and hey, look, it's lunch.
It's a walking taco. Yeah.
So anyway, we're still waiting on our guest right now, and I wanted to kind of there's something that I myself was wondering about. See, my name is David Myers. Actually, my middle name is Esteban. If you want, I can, in a future episode, upload a picture of my middle name, driver's license, and all that. I am, in fact, a white Hispanic, just like I declared last episode. And actually more authentic than Elizabeth Warren, who thinks that she's a Cherokee Indian because of high cheekbones, and that's how she paid her way through law school. But anyway,
What the fuck is an Elizabeth Warren?
You never heard of?
11th grade. I graduated in 11th grade.
All right, well, we'll have to.
GED, folks.
Right.
I got a GED.
All right, we're gonna have to have some kind of remedial class in a future.
Yeah, you can tell me about that later.
Okay. So anyway, but I was curious about why do you call yourself Scott Beebe? Because we know Buell is his last name, not Bueller. Save Ferris and whatnot. But
that's part of the reason. I fucking hate my name. I hate my first name, first of all. Because I'm like 9 fucking nationalities, and Scottish is not one of them. So Scott is a stupid thing to name me. And then my last name is German, and I am heavily Germanic in my ethnicity, my background, whatever you want to call it. But there's that fucking movie from just before I gave a shit about movies called Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where
you're an asshole.
Every time I would walk into a room in the early 90s, it would just, Bueller. People thought that was fucking hilarious. People try to read my name. They can't fucking read it. Buell. Is Scott
really,
Bluell here?
And look, Scott has a GED, and he can spell it. It's Buehl.
Buehl. And there used to be, back when we were still Germanic, there was an umlaut, which is those 2 little dots above the U. It made more sense in German than it does in English. It doesn't make any sense in English. And it doesn't translate well. It doesn't flow very good.
Right. It's kind of like how, what's his name? Boehner. First name. What's his name?
Ralph?
Boehner. No. From the, he used to be our leader of the House of Representatives. Boehner.
Ralph, it's just sticking in my head. I don't...
No. John Boehner.
John Boehner.
Yeah, see, the thing is that I think he probably did this on purpose because when he's of Germanic background as well, and when you put the umlaut over the vowels in his last name, it actually sounds something more like Boehner. Which
sounds like boner,
right?
Boner. That correlates.
So I can see why people at Ellis Island changed the pronunciation of their names
sometimes, but they probably should have just picked different names because I don't know. My name it doesn't translate well. People can't read it. People can't pronounce it unless I pronounce it to them first. And I also had this extenuating circumstance where I grew up. With my mother and my stepfather. I never knew my dad. I had a stepfather and a half-sister. My stepfather's last name was Brown, and so my little sister's name was Brown, and my parents didn't want to go, for whatever reason, through the legal process to get my last name changed, even though my stepdad raised me since I was like 2.5, 3 years old. Didn't want to go through the legal process, or weren't able to go through the legal process of changing my name. So what they would do is cute shit like, when they filled out my paperwork for school, they would put my legal name and then put Brown in parentheses. So then I started getting, is Scott Brown Buell here? Is Scott...
Brown one.
Buell Brown? Buell Brown? Is Buell Brown here?
Not that Scottish guy in the kilt. No, that brown guy over there.
It was fucking obnoxious. So, I've never really liked my name. And then, in the past, we'll say, certain time, I don't want to really reveal my amount of greenness, but I've been doing stand-up recently, and my name does not translate well on stage. Plus, when you have your headliner, or your host read your name, this dude's never met you, and he's fucking up your name and everything like that. So for entertainment purposes, it just seems easier for me to use Scott Beebe. And Beebe comes from that story I told you where I used to have 2 last names, Buell and Brown.
Oh,
BB.
So you're a Brown Buell.
I'm gonna fucking kill you.
So what do
I
you...
also, when I first thought of that, the very first thing that popped into my head, which I'm a fucking Tarantino fanatic, that was the child's name in Kill Bill, was BB.
Oh.
And I love Kill Bill, and so...
Yeah, I'm really not a...
I'm Scott Beebe.
Right.
Deal with
it.
See you fucks.
See, the thing is... Oftentimes people will ask me, have you seen this movie, or do you remember this scene from that? Well, see, I don't know, I have this weird gap because I was raised on Turner Classic Movies, and so I have this kind of thing running in the back of my mind, this repeat of, oh, hello, I'm Robert Osborne. But see, I've really missed out on a lot of contemporary movies. So
he's like that fucking character from that Brendan Fraser movie where the family locks themselves in the fucking bomb shelter.
Oh, Jumanji?
No, it's Brendan Fraser and Christopher Walken is his dad, and it's like the 50s, right? And they're scared that like the fucking the Russians are gonna bomb or somebody's gonna bomb, so they have like a bomb shelter in their basement, right? So he's like 5 or 6, and they go down into the bomb shelter and they seal it off, and he comes out 20 years later with no pop culture references. That's David.
And that actually makes the point even more clear because I had no idea what he was talking about.
Exactly.
But anyway, so I guess now we know where Scott's pseudonym comes from. Anyway, we're still waiting for our guest, so I don't know. I guess Scott, we gotta fill some airtime, don't we?
Well, we have this guest here to discuss today, like we had said already, is the Muslim issue. Really, how it affects you in your daily life, which I'm going to probably assume very little. What you think about these people spreading throughout the world, if it's fair, if they should have to conform to the countries where they're moving's laws, or whether they should just be able to do heathen desert people things in New York City. So,
well, see, that's one of the things that I think. I hear a lot of leftists, liberals, whomping on Christians frequently because of, like for example, that woman down in Kentucky that wouldn't sign the marriage certificates for gays.
Okay, I heard about that.
Marriage.
I heard about
right.
that.
So, and the thing is with that, with Christianity is if I can, we're gonna have to overlap this into many episodes, and there is no set. The thing about Christianity, as far as the New Testament goes, it's not a rule book. It's really some kind of hodgepodge of Aesop's fables, where you have some parables, and people have derived religious beliefs from that. It's different from, like, for example, the Jewish Torah and Talmud, and
my favorite Joe Rogan bit, and I'm sorry, Joe, I'm not going to do the whole bit, but the best line in the bit is basically his explanation of especially the Old Testament, but Christianity in general is, you could show most of those stories to an 8-year-old retarded boy, and his response would be, well, there's a lot of holes in that story.
Yeah, there's a lot of colorful ways. If you translate it into modern language, the New Testament actually really doesn't sound much different than some crackhead standing outside 7-Eleven at 1 in the morning and just telling you how his day went. But anyway, the difference between Christian faith and the Jewish and Islamic traditions is that the scripture that Islam and Judaism derive their beliefs from is one of it's more of a rule book than a collection of fables like the New Testament is.
It's less a moral guideline and more direct instruction.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. This is one of the very few religions I've never researched literally. and I don't mean that in the hipster way. I mean like literally. I've never read the Quran. I've read the Old Testament. I've read the New Testament. I've read lots of works on Buddhism, and I've read things like the Bhagavad Gita from Hinduism.
Oh yeah, exactly.
But I've never really delved into the Quran. I figured it was just another offshoot of Christianity or Judaism, and what I'm being told now is like, no, it's just a rule book of how to kill everyone else on Earth.
Well, okay, so there's two things there that are true. One, it is a rule book, and killing is specifically prescribed in that. But at the same token, it is an offshoot of Judaism, Christianity, because the same
they're supposed to have this same like God, right?
Right,
like more or less.
Well, the same angelic figure comes down. Gabriel comes down and speaks to Muhammad, and that's how he is given what becomes the Quran. He's memorized it, and he puts it into text. Okay. That's what it is. Okay. And but then again, also we got to go back to.
And then who's the parallel in Judaism? That's Moses is the Muhammad parallel.
He sort of is a parallel, and that's the thing. People think of Moses is he's a religious figure, but really, I think in the historical context, he's more of a political figure because, see, before the Exodus occurred from Egypt, there were actually 12 tribes of Israel, and when you look at the Ten Commandments, which really are not a moral guide for anything, because when you look at them, the first 5 or 6 of them really have to do with how you should worship this particular God. But see, the thing is that the first one is, thou shalt not worship any other gods but I. Now the thing is that most people, when they look at that in the modern context, they think that means, okay, well, I should abandon some sort of vice. I should not indulge in media. I should not indulge in sexual endeavors.
Overindulgence of any kind is replacing the overindulgence that you should have in your faith.
Right, but see, the thing is that when taken into the actual historical context, there were actually 12 different tribes, and thus there were actually 12 different gods of Israel when that was written. So, actually, the Exodus occurred at a time before monotheistic Judaism was established. It just so happens that the tribe he bumbled into when he met Jethro and married his daughter, and did the whole he hallucinating behind the burning bush thing. That scene.
DMT.
Yes, DMT.
Echinacea.
Yeah. We will be addressing that later on too. He was actually more of a political figure because he united the 12 tribes of Israel under one God, El, and that's why the first commandment was not actually a, what would you call that? It wasn't admonishing worldly pursuits, but actually more of a declaration of loyalty to a particular God within the circle of Judaic gods.
Okay. And so the only way that Christianity is an offshoot of that is because it's like they're both offshoots of Judaism. It's like one is a super hyper peaceful offshoot of Judaism, and one is a super hyper violent offshoot of Judaism, and Judaism's somewhere in the middle where they got a pretty scary, fucked up God who will smite you if he feels like it, but he's also nice sometimes. And
right, well, that's the thing, is that the analogy I like to use when I'm describing religion is, imagine yourself standing in a bathroom or a locker room or something at a gym or something like that, and you got two mirrors. One is to your front, one is to your back, and you're at the center of it. Now, in the analogy, to make it work, you are the original idea of that religion. But when you look into the mirror, it reflects itself, and it reflects itself continuously. But if you look at it, the reflections, the further they go down, the more obscure they become.
Mm-hmm. Like making a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy.
Right, just like how, what's that guy's name?
Is there a glory hole in this bathroom?
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. No, actually, the person I was thinking of was Andy Warhol. I have a print in my humble abode, my apartment, that shows a picture of the San Francisco Bridge, and the quote beneath it is, "Life is a series of images that repeat themselves as something to that effect." And that pretty much harkens back to my analogy about the mirrors, is that as time goes on, religion reinvents itself, reflecting upon its past, but also incorporating the social traditions of that particular time. Hence, that's why we have so many different sects of Christianity.
I choke on that word all the time.
Yeah. It's really, it kind of puts a bad taste in your mouth. But anyway.
No, but I get what you're saying about the evolution of religion and how it, it has to be relevant to the people in the day and so forth. I mean, there's amazing comparisons you can make to religions throughout history, how they parallel themselves. I mean, all the way back to ancient Sumeria, translates right into Egypt, translates right into Babylonian, translates right into Akkadian, translates right into Judaism. I mean, they have very similar stories about very similar things. I think I read something that said if you go back throughout history and research characters in different religious texts, there's like 20 different versions of a dude who does all the same tricks Jesus does.
Yeah, like the whole
water into wine, raising from the dead,
wine,
walking on water, all those things.
Yes,
Those were not new concepts when they wrote that book.
There's a lot of repetition, and the other thing too is that this is the same thing with religion. I believe is similar to, for example, you have the Great Pyramids of Giza in Egypt. By far, they are the most advanced as far as engineering and everything like that. But while they're the oldest ones, the newer pyramids are significantly better engineered than
absolutely
those ones.
The farther along you go in the timeline, the less engineering was put into them, the less structurally sound they are, the less perfect they are. And the older you seem to go, you have this perfection of style and craft, for sure.
Exactly. And so the thing is that you have this, using the pyramids as an analogy to religion is that religion looks back on the past and imagines some kind of perfection, and subsequently tries to imitate that.
It's the telephone fucking game. When you're a little kid, you have a group of kids sit in a circle, and you tell them something. Jimmy has blue shoes, and he likes to read the news. And they're supposed to tell that around the circle, and by the time it gets back to the first person, Jimmy's wearing red shoes, and he fucking hates CNN.
Oh, okay. Well, because I thought what I heard when I was listening to the telephone game, when you said Jimmy wears blue shoes, I heard actually Jimmy likes to blow dudes. But
see, and you misinterpret. Translation is a huge problem too, because you try to translate Aramaic into English, German, French, and Spanish. You're going to get different books. You're just going to.
Exactly, and there's a perfect source that I could bring up, mistranslating Jesus, which actually has to do with the the writing of the King James version of what we call the Bible.
Okay.
Where you actually had a lot of literates. I was about to say scholars, but that's not actually true. They're actually probably Slovak turnip farmers writing the New Testament, and when they don't know what they're writing, there was actually a significant margin for error.
I mean, just the New Testament in general.
In general.
I mean, you have a book that was basically approved by a dying warlord, Constantine, and like a few of his underlings who have to say yes to whatever he says. They rewrote all these stories. They compiled them in the way they felt appropriate and released it to the public as the Word of God.
Right. So the fact that that's a distinction between Christianity and Islam, is that the Quran is the word of
hasn't been
Allah.
rewritten as many times.
It has not been rewritten at all. In fact, that would be that would be apostasy. Apostasy. That's another word I get choked up on. Leaves a bad taste in your mouth as well.
I've never even heard that word.
Apostasy. That's when
hippopotamuses do it doggy style, right?
Not quite. That's like when you have people who are trying to pander for votes here in the U.S. and like to talk about moderate Muslims. There's no such thing as a moderate Muslim in Islam. Exactly, because if you are a moderate Muslim, you're in fact an apostate, which means you are subject to any kind of cruel and barbaric punishments, as described directly by the Quran, in fact. But
I interestingly agree that there are no not that there are no moderate Muslims, but I don't think that should be popular vernacular for the reason that if we're only differentiating between moderate Muslims and extremist Muslims. So who is the norm? Well, that would probably be the moderates because there's automatically going to be more women and children, and they are not killing as many people as your same people that kill people in America. Adult males, 18 to 26. That's your extremist Muslim population. You have a couple old guys leading them around by their dicks. But my biggest argument for whenever, and that's why we're doing this podcast, and our guest is, I don't want to call him anti-Muslim, but he doesn't necessarily enjoy the idea of that.
Oh no, I am right. Our guest, he is a self-professed anti-Muslim, or anti-Islamic person, but so am I, and I have a reason for that. See, I had heard that in a global poll by the Pew Research Center, actually 14% of Muslims worldwide, and granted statistics can be skewed, but 14% of Muslims worldwide support Sharia law in favor of killing of infidels and killing in the name of Islam. Now, we know, of course, that not everybody who's a Muslim is going out and killing people. However,
also, people who take polls are fucking retarded. You get these fucking Gallup polls. 68%, I mentioned this on our last podcast, 68% of Americans believe the Earth is less than 10,000 years old. Mm-hmm. You're only getting the statistics from somebody dumb enough to answer that poll.
Right, and a lot of these are voluntary type polls. The thing, though, that Scott brought up is that, yeah, we do have what the media likes to refer to as moderate Muslims, but see, according to Islam, there is no degrees of separation. There is no moderate Islam. There is no extremist Islam. There is Islam, the way, literally, in Arabic, and if you deviate from that in any way, in fact, you're worse than people like, well, I guess, well, there's a hierarchy. See, there's people, the Al-Kitab, which means of the book, people of the book. That would include Jews and Christians. They do have the option to convert, but they have to pay a kind of a tax or fee, and that's prescribed in the Quran. That's the whole thing. Like I was saying, it's not Aesop's fables. It's the
So basically, they got to pay union dues to get into the Muslim nation.
Pretty much, yeah. So it's like convert or die, or pay your union dues, and we'll let you hang out for a bit. But see, me and Scott, we're second to last on the rung on the ladder of people that should have their heads cut off. 'Cause the worst,
we're eligible, so we're still like just me and you as two Americans.
We're complete. It's not even that we're American.
Are we able to pay? Like, could me and you pay that fee and become a Muslim, or are we already like not eligible because we're American, mostly white?
Oh no, the toilet was flushed and we're already down the drain. See, the thing is that
who's their most killable people?
The worst thing in Islam is to be an apostate, which is a person who was Muslim, but they reject the faith thereafter.
Oh, Obama.
No, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. He's kind of like on both sides of the fence, but we'll get back to that. We're trying to investigate this issue. See, now, if you are a Jew or a Christian, you're not really in safe territory, but you're all right for the time being. Now, apostates are people who are Muslims, who have rejected the faith, and that would include moderate Muslims, because if you
we're getting a little bit too into this, because I want to get into this with our guest, because
right.
I'm aware of, I think where you're going with this is that Muslims like ISIS or Al Qaeda, they kill more Muslims than they do anyone else, because they're trying to get rid of the bad Muslims first in what they consider the dejectors of their religion.
Right, and actually the closest thing to Islam is, in fact, what you see in groups like ISIS, Al Qaeda, Hezbollah, Army of God, translated to English. But see, me and Scott, we're actually, for some reason, see, we're not believers, but we're caught between the Christian and Jew sect, which they can pay the fee. We can't pay the fee because, see, we're non-believers, but we're not actually as bad as the people that ISIS is trying to kill, like Scott just said.
Yeah.
The apostates, because rejecting Allah after having accepted Him and His rule book is even worse than not having accepted Him in the first place. We are the infidel, and just picture us riding on horses across the Mongolian plains. We are the infidel.
One thing I just wanted to throw this in here, because I think our guest is going to be here relatively shortly. My favorite commandment is a commandment that it's not as Christian as it sounds. Whenever you know what the rest of the commandment says, my favorite commandment is, "Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife." And we think of that in this ridiculously romantic way of, like, there's true love out there in the world everywhere, and by interfering somehow, that goes against God's will. What the actual commandment says is, "Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, or his pig, or his slave, or his cow, or his fucking Sony PlayStation 4. It's calling women possessions. That is the least motherfucking Christian thing I have ever heard of. So instead of keeping all the original parts in the commandment, the New Testament decides, we're just going to cut it off at "Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife" and call it a day.
That's actually not true, because, in fact, in a couple of the Gospels, Jesus does say, there's apparently some jackass that asks him, so does this mean that the old rules don't count? And he says something to the effect of, not one jot of the old law shall change until, and then a lot of apocalyptic imagery like that. But hey, look, it looks like we have our first guest.
Alex is here.
Woo! In the house.
What's up, A-Rod?
Good evening, gentlemen. It's good to be here. Nice
Hat
to be on the
tip to you.
podcast.
The reason we brought you here today is because you're my favorite go-to person when I'm trying to rattle around the issue of Islam in my head, and you seem to have kept up on it to a certain extent. You're, what would you consider yourself, a born-again Christian, or you're definitely Christian?
Yeah, I consider myself
non-denominational, or
non-denominational.
non-denominational Christian. Okay, and we get into topics and mostly it's because it seems like you're concerned for the well-being of the world based on these people's existence in general. And I want to be concerned if that's a necessary concern.
Yeah, should we be concerned? And actually, two things that just came out of Scott's commentary that I'd like to address is, should we be concerned? What should we be concerned about? And also, you call yourself a Christian, and I'd like to know what exactly defines you as a Christian. So take your vantage point and let's just fire off.
Yeah, you
Let's
want
see
to
where
do
we go
that
with
first? You want to explain like the roots of your Christianity? Just
what does it mean when you say
because
that
I know
you're a
you
Christian?
have a brother who's a pastor, correct?
Yes. I have a brother who's a pastor in North Carolina for a particular mission down there. He, I'm not necessarily sure that he works with a congregation, but I do know that he does a lot of work that involves helping homeless people, finding shelter for them, and finding jobs for them. He's also Baptist evangelical, so that can kind of give you a picture right there. He doesn't come across as a person that you'd say too preachy or just spouts just complete insanity, but he's pretty devoted to his faith.
Is he pretty connected with, like, comfortable saying I'm a Baptist?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
You would definitely be able to know that upon meeting him. He's very, very, very kind individual. He'd give you the shirt off his back. I've known him my whole entire life. So,
But if I can interject for just
Sure,
a
go
second, kindness, giving the shirt off your back, the golden rule. That's really not a moral feature that's unique to Christianity. So what
I agree.
What I'm trying to figure out is when I talk to people who say they're Christian, what exactly is it that makes you a Christian, a follower of Christ, fisher of men, whatever you want to say like that, as opposed to just adopting, a generic set of moral values.
I think probably the most important thing you would have to note if someone is to identify themselves as a Christian is someone who actually who has faith in Jesus Christ. That would be first and foremost. That's the biggest. Christianity has a lot of morals and values you can take from it, but the overall theme and point of the religion is salvation through Jesus Christ. So I would have to say that's probably my biggest, connection with Christianity and how I identify myself as a Christian. I don't identify myself as a Christian because I go to a church and worship with other people. I identify myself as a Christian because I recognize and accept Jesus Christ as my personal Savior.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
See, you're to the point where you feel like that was a legitimate historical figure, like Martin Luther King or Gandhi or any actual like contemporary historical. You think that was an actual historical figure, and not only it physically manifested itself in historical reference, but that was also God's way of speaking to the world and being like, "This is your last chance."
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, I'd have to agree with yes. He was a figure as I wouldn't say charismatic. He was pretty straightforward, not very grandiose individual. But But yeah, you could say he was to the same effect of Gandhi or Martin Luther King, to that same effect. But he also carried divine powers as well. So does that answer your question?
Well, going back to what you said about, you said you weren't a person who necessarily goes to church. And actually, that brings up a great point. There are a lot of people that go to church where I would say that they're not necessarily Christians. And in fact, Soren Kierkegaard, the Danish philosopher, said that if everybody's a Christian, nobody's a Christian, which is true. And I could say the same thing about people that go to church. Myself, going to church makes me just as much Christian as me standing in a parking garage makes me a car. But I'd like to have a little bit of your input on that. What exactly do you think makes a Christian? Because we have this divide between tradition in the Catholic Church, we have doctrine, again, in the Catholic Church, and we also have biblical interpretations of the liturgy. So where do you think the true moral foundation of Christianity comes from? Is it from tradition? Is it from literal interpretation of the Bible? Where does that come from? Because
I think the true, what was that you said? The moral
foundation.
The moral foundation of Christianity is the testament of Jesus Christ. The church is an entity used to help spread the word of Jesus Christ, but everything it boils down basically to what Jesus said, and that'll be we'll find an answer to a lot of the questions you asked pertaining to Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
And as for you, when you said you can be in a what was that, a car in a garage makes you a car. If you're a Christian, you go to if you go to church all the time, it makes you a Christian. Well, I mean, at the same time, though,
what I was basically trying to say is that the fact that you go to church makes you just as much a Christian as me standing in a garage makes you a car. So I was basically trying to use a hyperbole to explain that the fact that you
the fact that you go to church does not make you any more of a Christian than anybody else, because if you're not actually what's the words I'm looking for here? Absorbing and integrating what you're being taught in the church into your life, and and if you don't have a relationship with God, and a relationship with God is something that is close and personal to you and only God. So, like I said, you can walk through that door, and you know what I mean. And to some people, I feel like it's kind of like a show for them.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of showmanship as to and it totally contradicts the point of the religious teachings, and it kind of really
So what is the point of the religious teachings?
The point of the religious teaching of Jesus Christ is to bring salvation to the soul of every man.
Yeah, but here's the thing: it's so common sense based. Get that motherfucker another beer right now.
All right.
It's so common sense based that it's almost unnecessary to me. Like, I get and I appreciate that it is preaching like good and righteous acts and behavior, but they almost seem evident. Like, if you have a baby in a room and you're standing in the room, like, the baby's never met you, and the baby's never met me. You're standing in the room, the baby's sitting on the couch, I walk in, I slap you in the fucking face, the baby's gonna get a horrified look on its face. Like, it just knows that's fucked up. Like, a lot of the don't hurt people, don't fuck people over, don't steal from people, don't rape people, that's all fucking common sense.
It's really nothing, it's nothing unique to Christianity. I mean, we can look back to Greek philosophy. We can even go back a couple thousand years to Confucianism, which many people categorize as a religion. It's really not. It's really a political philosophy. In fact, when asked about
it's
the
actually
gods,
philosophy. It's just philosophy. It's just philosophy. He advised many political figures in China. But he wasn't a politician.
Right. The Analects of Confucius, it's not to be taken as a religion. The Analects of Confucius was basically a guidebook to being a gentleman in Chinese society at that particular time. And in fact, when he was asked, how should we deal with the gods?
Well,
he answered.
That's a good comparison, and I get where you're going with that now.
What he answered was, well, we can't deal with matters on earth, so why should we deal with matters in heaven? Yeah. So, but to continue,
don't be a heathen. There's a lot of the same themes, like, and I understand why several thousand years ago that had to be reiterated to people on a daily basis. It just seems kind of a moot point at this juncture.
Exactly, the golden rule thing. But
you guys were the one thing I wanted to touch on real quick was you guys were describing people who say that they prescribe to a religion because they study it on their own, or because they try to live out those values, and people who want to fuck over everybody they see and go to church on Sunday and say, I'm a good Christian and you're not because you didn't even go to church. Well, I'm missing who this quote is from, but there's this amazing quote that I heard that religion is a man sitting in church thinking about kayaking. Spirituality is a man sitting in a kayak thinking about God.
Yes, I'd have to agree, and that's the main difference between me being a Christian and a lot of other people. I'm more of a spiritual person as opposed to religious. I've always found the actual religious it couldn't be more far removed from the actual religion itself. I mean, not from the actual religion. I mean to say the actual teachings. It's just it's just too much of a show. It doesn't encourage a personal relationship with God, and it's something that it's free and you can already do, but and I believe more in people being spiritual in that aspect than going to actual church. I mean, well, if you find at the same time though, if you find a church that is spiritual, that's a very good that's a win-win situation right there. But as opposed to you could probably say about.
It's a
rough estimated value, about 75,
it is a club.
maybe 75 to about 65% churches on the world. It's just a show and a song and a dance, and you just leave it at that.
Yeah, like I said, it's a club, and if you get along with all the other members of the club,
everything's great.
And nobody's trying to show everybody else up. It's probably a rare scenario, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's churches that everybody gets along.
But see, the thing with religion is that it's supposed, at its core, religion is supposed to be some kind of fundamental, objective understanding of the world, the mechanics of it, as far as morals, as far as purpose, things like that.
I think we're born with all of that. I think that's inherent in every human being. I don't think you have to be taught.
No, you don't need to be.
What's fucked up and what's not fucked up. I think that's part of the basis of our consciousness.
Correct, but see, okay, we have these basic things like that, like the golden rule, like we just discussed now. But the specific mythos behind something like the Jesus Christ.
Christ figure, Muhammad figure.
Well, I mean, it's like what differentiates that against, say, the Nordic mythology or the Greek mythology or the Egyptian mythology? You have these reoccurring themes. Of the golden rule. Mm-hmm. However, the specific mythos. I mean, where does that come from? And actually, it
comes from a need to be able to control the masses. There's certain things that apply to certain places and times, and that's where you insert story here, where you have this warrior walked to the top of Mount Olympus and spoke to God, and God said, don't kill, don't rape, don't murder, don't fucking steal.
But we do, and we do those things.
We do them anyways. We do them anyway.
But the point of what I'm saying with this is that why I understand why those things could be inserted in there. That we could go on and talk about Plato's Republic on that same thread. But what I'm saying is that why is it that specific mythological thread is the one that's to be believed? I mean, granted, we acknowledge that we have.
I think you explained that in your explanation, because we do that shit anyways. I
Right,
think
we
we're
do.
inherently born with the knowledge of what's right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But given the choice, we're going to see how much we can fucking get away with.
But-
So you have a major part of your everyday life constantly beating it into your head, do the right thing, do the right thing, do the right thing.
But but what I'm saying is that why? Look, you have in Christianity, and correct me if I'm wrong because I'm going to elaborate on this. But if you are,
Can I smoke a cigarette in here?
um,
Someone have to get up.
certainly. But as I was saying, if you are a Christian, see, there's really nothing distinguishing the values of Christianity that most cafeteria Catholics, as I would say,
Slabby
that they
Joes,
espouse.
slabby Joes.
And why should we worship this specific God, the God of Jethro's tribe? Why is that such an
Is that a real
essential-
thing? The first time I ever heard that was when you said it earlier.
No, it's definitely true.
That Jethro
Well, see,
is the actual name of.
that's the name of the guy. See, now, if I do have
That's never a name that's brought up. You hear
no, Jethro. He's
all
he's
these
in
other
Exodus.
names. You never hear Jethro. That sounds like I just keep thinking of the fucking. Here's a little story about a man named Jed. Poor mountaineer barely kept his family fed.
No,
Beverly
see-
Hillbillies Jethro.
Well, No, it is Jethro, and I did
Damn.
have my credentials, but see, you, like I said before, you used my diploma to roll up a blunt. So
So it means nothing now.
oh,
I have smoked
So-
it, and the knowledge is mine.
so anyway, Alex, would you like to
Care to iterate? As
iterate
to
or
why people should...
why
people should-
specifically?
What are your values as a Christian? What are the values that you would say these are the things that all Christians should literally adhere to and try to incorporate into their daily lives?
Okay. All right. That's a pretty easy question to answer. I should say the
Microphone's up here, bro.
values that any Christian should have would definitely be, as you previously talked about, the Ten Commandments, keeping those is the same. It's funny because you spoke of, what is that, the original do not covet thy neighbor's wife, and other things as well. And what is that, how it's been rebroken down to, I think, what is that? I'm pretty sure it says do not covet thy neighbor's wife, and then before that it says do not covet thy neighbor's things, I believe.
Well, yeah, I think what Scott
separating
I think
wife from property.
I think what Scott was trying to say is that women in that time period were treated like
Oh,
property,
yes.
which actually is true because while people like to talk about the Ten Commandments, that actually only is one of 200 and some laws in the Levite law, where
Yes.
which we that's part of the whole thing with Christianity is that why they're kind of harmless is because some people, okay, all right, you go to church on Sundays, you don't eat meat on Fridays. Well, most of them are not aware that you are also condemned to some kind of eternal punishment if you eat anything that has webbing on its feet, or if you like shrimp, that actually condemns you to an eternity of suffering. But see, the whole thing is that that's open to interpretation in Christianity because, unlike the rule book of the Talmud and Torah and the Quran and Islam,
Yes. That's one of the main features of the Bible is that it is so open to interpretation that you can pull pretty much anything out of it. As to me, who I've read through the Bible, I haven't read the whole thing. I'm not going to be one of those guys who said I read the whole thing.
oh, I'm one of those guys.
But I've read the New Testament and stuff like that, and to me it seems kind of straightforward. As for reading the whole thing, I cannot say that I've done that.
Okay.
Bible's a pretty big book.
Right, and
there's-
actually
and there's-
4, Matthew, Luke, John, and...
and in the different testaments of the apostles, it's the main message that I carry with me on that.
Now, see, I myself, like I said, I'm not a Christian, but however, I do subscribe to something from the Epistle of James, where he says that he condemns the rabbis standing on the street corner espousing the religious virtues, and says that the greatest expression of religiosity is to visit the orphans and widows in their homes and keep yourself hidden from the world. I think that, I mean, that's value that I.
That sounds really fucking rapey.
No, not really.
Visit the orphans and the widows of the world.
Well,
and keep yourself hidden. That is rapey as fuck.
I guess it depends on your mindset.
it depends on, like I said, it all depends on your interpretation of it. But I think the main the interpretation that I would have from that would be, is it's charity work, and it's pointing out that it is better to be, someone who is involved in charity and helping out those less fortunate than themselves,
while at the same time rejecting pride, kind of like
the
Batman or something.
Yes, Christianity has a lot of underlying themes, and one of the main principles that I take from it, and this is probably just me being oppositional, defiant. It speaks heavily against going with the world, doing as others do in the world, or steeping yourself in the ways of the world, and that in and of itself, I believe in wholeheartedly. Just because of the way how society conducts itself on a day-to-day basis, I mean, I'd rather honestly have no part of it whatsoever. I mean,
says the motherfucker who's addicted to 4chan.
If I may interject here, folks, we're coming up on 1 hour. This is actually a special episode. We don't know. Based on your response, we may be continuing with 1 hour format, or excess, or maybe reverting to the original 30 hour, or a 30-minute rather.
30 hours,
30,
motherfucker! 30 hours. We're going 30-hour podcast from here on out. That's all you're gonna get.
30
all
minutes.
day, every day, 30 hours a day. 11th grade.
Or we could break it up to 4 6-hour specials.
Oh, hey, somebody finished 11th grade, not Scott, but hey, hey, we have in the room also Alex's lovely assistant.
Her name is Christy.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Just say hi.
Hi, I'm Christy, and I'm just sitting here in the room and listening to these 3 guys on the couch bullshitting about whatever.
Oh, this is not bullshit. This is completely academic journalism.
Yeah.
No. She sells tobacco and fake urine at Tobacco World somewhere. But
so
anyway,
she's someone you can trust.
Get your dab rigs, nigga.
Indeed. If you ever get a call from West Diagnostics, refer it to us.
Yeah, we'd be the people to call.
So anyway, where we were going with this is that, okay, so we have narrowed down that Alex is indeed a Christian, and that
Is that verified now? We verified that.
I think
Well, I mean, I think me telling you that I'm a Christian.
I think that was pretty much from go. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I've been I've been beating this dead horse over here for a couple minutes. So.
I mean, I have a cross in my back pocket in my wallet. If you need any more further verification,
let's start trashing Muslims.
No, because
this isn't a smear campaign.
Yeah, I mean, let's start discussing.
Not yet, because see, we already know we're going. Our viewers or listeners, rather, they already know we're going that way because I am voting for Trump. I already said that a couple times.
Plus, if you're locked in this far, you're listening until the end.
I mean,
yeah, that's true, and
the autism doesn't stop, ladies and gentlemen.
And I'm sorry, you probably are a hipster, but anyway, so I'm wondering if regarding the New Testament, because I'm sure many people say this they say that's Old Testament when you bring up something from the Old Testament.
Yeah,
how do you personally distinguish between the Old and New Testament, because I'd like to hear your input and respond to that.
I kind of think at the same time the Bible is first you have to understand what the actual Bible is. The Bible is a collection of scriptures, of writings compiled from the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Right, and actually in Koine Greek, the
but
word...
not all of them. But definitely not fucking all of them.
Not
the word...
It's a largely it's an incomplete collection because there are books such as the Apocryphalia that cover a lot of books. I thumbed through
Book of Enoch.
Well, actually, in Biblios in Koine Greek means series of small books, which is where we get the word Bible from.
Right.
So of course, Alex is correct in that it's a collection of small stories that have been arranged in whatever approved fashion.
Yes.
So.
Yes. So as for really concerning the Old Testament, I kind of see it as a brief, very incomplete. It's very cherry picked.
It is.
And that's insane to me that you would say that, because we've had this discussion before, and I mean, have you or have you not said that the Old Testament basically doesn't count? It doesn't count. Only the New Testament counts. Have you said that to me before?
Yes, I've said that many times.
Okay, well, where do you think... Okay, so if the New Testament... If the Old Testament is cherry-picked, what the fuck is the New Testament? If it doesn't even include the whole Old Testament, and where do you think the Old Testament came from?
The Old Testament is
because it's not an original document.
Well, the Old Testament is actually the Torah in...
Right, and the Torah
which is a collection
of
religious writings that has been formed together because 12 tribes of Israel, you have to understand that those people probably all had different religious texts.
Right, and there was thousands of years of religious history before that that created that.
And when we go to the whole thing
it's all cherry-picked at the end of the day. It's all fucking cherry-picked.
It really is, but see, the thing is that going back to like what I said is that when that distinction between Old and New Testament, it specifically says in the Gospel of Matthew that the old law shall not be changed until, like I said, a whole bunch of apocalyptic events happen. So how is that reconciled with this neo-Judaism that is Christianity?
Well, I think that's a really good question to have. Touches on a lot of key points that we haven't got to yet, but I feel like we're going to have to discuss those at a later point in time in the next episode, because looks like we're running a little short on time over here.
Yeah, it's getting to a point where I feel like we probably lost most of our viewership at this point.
And some of us have day jobs.
Day job, dude. You're gonna be hungover as fuck in the morning. But that wouldn't be new for either of us, so I digress.
Hey.
I'd like to thank our guest, Alex. I think you've brought a lot of content, a lot of things that we didn't really understand as non-Christians.
Actually, I totally understood them.
He did understand. I didn't. I learned a lot of shit, but he didn't. But regardless, I think our viewership probably learned a lot, and I think there's a billion different ways, like Alex said, to go with this. So I think what we're gonna do now is just wish you all namaste and
happy Kwanzaa.
Happy Kwanzaa, Auf Wiedersehen, Hitler's pool boy, and we're out.
All right, so we're going to have to wrap things up today, but apparently we have gained some new sponsors, I guess. Emily, and introduce yourself, please. Your name?
I'm Kasaya.
Oh, okay. So tune in next week. They have a message for you. We're going to have some special guests. Why don't you give them a little preview?
Go ahead, tell them, girls.
Tune in next week when our guests will be Squeaky Cheddar and Elmo, allegedly.
Allegedly, of course.
Allegedly.
And I think the Cookie Monster might be showing up too. But anyway, y'all have a good night, and we'll see you later.
We are the people that can find whatever you may need.